Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. We really appreciate you guys watching as always. Definitely appreciate when you guys like the video, share the channel, subscribe to this channel, all that good stuff. It tells me that you guys like this type of videos, so definitely appreciate you guys being here. Now today we're going to talk about communication, and I got to tell you, communication, just as you know, medical supplies and things like that, is one of those some of those aspects of prepping that we all forget. We technically don't like to prep on communication and medical. We technically just like buying guns. So that's very, very important. We're gonna talk to the Alabama Owens again. He's over here. So you want to do a quick intro?
Sure. Guys, I'm the Alabama Owens. I'm a prepper, gun nut, and a ham radio operator. So when JH6 asked me if I'd like to help him with a chat on communications, that's right in my wheelhouse. So I was all about it. So I appreciate you having me on, JH6.
Cool. Thanks for coming. And I got to tell you, communication is so important. You have to be able to talk to each other, and having those radios allows you to pass, you know, other than talk to each other, also allows you to do things better. Because when you have simple instructions, you know, when you tell somebody, hey, go here, and that person could hear that, it just happens, versus screaming at somebody. You know, maybe you don't want to scream at someone because they may be a bad guy in the house, or, you know, I mean, there's so many different applications you could do it. You could do when you're able, or many different things you could do when you're able to talk to each other. Now, we talked about those radios that I had. What is it called?
The GMRS radios, yeah.
Yeah, the typical two-way radios kind of thing.
Yeah, they're good for, you know, field exercises if you're a quarter of a mile apart.
Yeah, and that's what I figure. You know, I got them on Black Friday for what, $25. They do have a lot of capabilities. One of the things that I do is, now that I gave one to my kids, and I got one on my room, so every night we do kind of like a radio check, and I told them, hey, something happened, you know, you guys could get the radio and call me. Definitely you could scream, but the radio actually has like an icon on the bottom that you press, and it started making these weird noises. So that's kind of like an emergency procedure that I set up with them. But yeah, you're right. That lasts about 1.5 miles, I think. They advertised 24 miles, but it was actually like 1.5 miles, which is which is good, but not that good.
That's about typical for those. You know, you just you can't believe the advertisement on radios, because they're going to tell you what it could get in absolutely perfect conditions, but you're never going to have those perfect conditions. So, you know, a mile, maybe 2 miles at the best, is probably the best you're going to get out of those.
Yeah. Now, I won't discourage anyone of buying those type of radios, because there's still good applications. You know, if you find yourself in some type of survival situation where you have to go, you know, you have to go into a small patrol or something like that, just to make sure your house or your neighborhood is safe, you could probably use those radios. If you have to stay and watch where one guy's in the backyard and one guy is in the front yard just setting up watch, you can still use those radios. I mean, there's a ton of applications where you could use those radios. But
no, they definitely have their place. They're just they're not what you think they are based on the packaging, because the packaging sure makes it sound like it's a long distance communication, and it's just not.
No, but with that said, there's ham radios, and you know, I'm very new to this, but I watch a bunch of YouTube videos like everybody else, and apparently you could talk like a long way across the state lines and everything. It's kind of crazy to believe that, to tell you the truth, because, you know, being in the Marine Corps, our radios didn't even do that, in many cases. So how do you start? If you want to be a hand operator, what is the first thing that you have to do?
Well, first off, you've got to get a license. You'll hear people refer to it as a ticket. Your ham radio operator's license. Most operators call it a ticket. And you know, to get that ticket, you've got to take a test. Years ago, back the first time I took my ticket, you actually had to know Morse code. You had to be able to both listen to and take down Morse code as it came in, and send Morse code. That's actually no longer a requirement for the technician license, the lowest level license for ham radio operators anymore. And so really what you have to study is the theory and how the radios work, which is really good because it gives you a background and it helps you know what your radio is capable of. And all the information is online. It's really, there's ARRL, I believe it's American, hold on, I'll tell you. Amateur Radio Relay League, I think it's ARRL. Just go to arrl.org, and they have sample questions that are on the test. It has all the study materials that you want to find, and really can give you the background to get into it and find out, just how involved the test is. Now, there is some theory in the test that's kind of, it takes some study to figure it out, but it's actually things that are going to be helpful to you once you get your ticket. So it's good things to know.
So once you get this ticket, how long do you have it for?
I think you have to renew it every 10 years.
Every 10 years? Okay.
But it's not you don't have to take the test again. It's like your driver's license, as long as you don't let it expire.
Right.
You just tell the FCC, yes, I need my ticket updated, my current address is this, excuse me, and you'll automatically be renewed. There's it's really the initial process of actually going in and getting the ticket is the hardest thing, because once you take that test, you kind of know the basics of what you need to do, and you really just kind of fall in line after that, because, and another thing, look in your local area. There's always, in any, I wouldn't even say major, any metropolitan area is going to have a ham radio club. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the best way to get started, is to just look online for your city and find the local ham radio club, and they can really help you and help you study, give you advice on what kind of rig to buy and everything.
All right, cool. So once you, I guess the biggest benefits to do this is that you are going to be able to talk at a really long distance, right?
Well, and that goes to the theory that you have to learn. There's so many different kinds of communication in ham radio. When I was 15, 16 and took the ticket the first time, I had a HF, a high frequency rig. It's a bigger rig, like a desktop type rig, and I've talked to people all over the world on that rig. What is most common is the VHF and UHF. This is one of the cheap, I believe it's pronounced Baofeng. Mm-hmm. It's a cheap Chinese radio, and this is why it's so much easier, and I think that everybody should go and get a ticket now, because back in the day, to get a radio like this, you were going to spend $300, $400, $500. I got this off Amazon for $35.
Wow.
This is a VHF UHF radio, so it does what ham radio operators call 2-meter and 440, and that is mostly local. And one of the things with ham radio is you actually have repeaters. So in my local area, there's several 2-meter repeaters and several 440 repeaters, and with those repeaters, I actually get an effective range of about 50 miles, mm-hmm. which would never happen with just a handheld radio. Even, I was kind of making fun of the GMRS radios, but even with this, which is a ham radio, just radio to radio, you're still going to be 2-3 miles max.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So,
but you can also have like a car radio or a home base station, which is going to increase your range because you can have a taller antenna, more power. But really, for VHF and UHF, which is what most people use most of the time, being able to use the repeaters is the big benefit. And, you talk about, well, what if the power grid goes out? The thing is, with those repeaters, most repeaters, the clubs that support them, have backup power, whether it be a generator or a battery system. So those repeaters stay online all the time.
Right, right, right. All right, so pretty much, but let me see if I get this straight because I'm pretty new to this. So the repeaters are pretty much controlled by the clubs or whoever has them out there. So you could just pretty much piggyback from those guys.
Yes, yes. Most of them they ask that you know they'd like for you to be a member of the club. Usually it's not very much, maybe $50 a year, something like that. But really, most of them are what are called open repeaters, which means that anybody that has a valid ticket is welcome to use a repeater whenever they want to.
How do you know where the repeaters are?
Well, and that's why it's important to get in touch with your local ham radio
Okay.
club, because they can give you a list of all the repeaters. There's actually websites on the internet that'll list repeaters for an area. So, like, you can just go to your city. Say you're in Dallas, Texas. You can Google Dallas, Texas ham radio repeaters, and you'll find a web page that has a list of all the open repeaters that are available in that area.
Okay, cool, cool. But if you don't have a repeater, if you don't have anything like that for survival situation kind of thing, you're looking about 3 miles. So you're looking about doubling your regular radius.
Well, and the benefit beyond that is that you could have like a home base station, not just the handy talkies like this, but a actual rig
Mm.
that sits in your house, and you can line of sight. And one thing with radios that people don't realize, the height of the antenna is the most important thing. So if you
Yeah.
can get the antenna up high on your home base station, you may get 30 miles out of the radio. You may be able to communicate with one of these to your home base station for 30 miles.
Hmm.
It just all
So
depends on the conditions and the terrain. And that's part of the things that you learn when you're studying to take the ticket.
right, right, right. Yeah, because I seeing a lot of here in Amazon. I see a lot of antennas and different things that you could do to pretty much improve the receptions of your radio. So um, let's see. Let me show you something real quick. Right here, I got a radio. It's about $200. So this is kind of like a home station, right?
That actually is exactly the radio that I have in my Jeep. Um, you can use that either as a mobile in a vehicle, or you could set it up and use it as a base station. Um, I do actually have an antenna on the house where I can bring that in and use that as a base station. But I use that radio in the vehicle. And I would say in my area, which is actually pretty hilly and mountainous, in my area, that to a handy talkie, you're going to average probably about 5 miles.
Okay. And this is about $200 right here.
Right.
So so
Now,
that's
again, you see that's a 2 meter, which is usually, well, at least in my area, that is the most popular set of frequencies that are used.
okay. Man, this is like this is like complicated. I hope some of the guys watching, this is gonna be meant pretty much to provide some information. It's definitely a lot of information out there in YouTube. So watch a bunch of videos and go from there. Like right here, we got an antenna. This is pretty much an antenna right here, $114. Um,
And you can find antennas that are really expensive, and you can find antennas that are really cheap. And uh, there'll be people that disagree with me, but um, you don't have to spend $115 on an antenna.
right.
Let me just say that.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. So all right, so let me go back to the basis real quick. So the ham radio is probably gonna give you a higher capability than the basic radio. And what I like about it is that you could increase from there. You could start from the very basic
Right.
radio like you just show for $30, and then you could go into a home station. You could go into an antenna. You could start using repeaters. So it's definitely like a growing capability of your system
Right.
versus just getting 2 radios and be like, okay, this is the only thing that I got.
Exactly, exactly. And, one of the really huge benefits of ham radio is most areas, the local club is actually set up and they are part of the uh, emergency watch system or disaster relief system. In my area, I'm in Tornado Alley, so when the weather's bad, rather than turn on the TV, I turn on the ham radio to the local 2-meter repeater. And what I've found is that I'll hear over the radio, tornado spotted at such and such place. It'll be about a minute and a half later on the TV, the meteorologist will be saying that because he's getting his information from the ham radio operators. They're usually the storm spotters that your local news station is listening to find out where the storm is.
So it's like what I got from watching some videos and things like that. There's like a totally network of peoples in the radio that I didn't even, it's kind of like YouTube. When I came here for the first time and I started to listen to some of the guys, there is like a whole network of people that just out there with these radios passing information.
Right. When they set up a disaster net, when there's bad weather coming in, it basically shuts down the repeater to just idle chat, and there's a protocol, and everyone, by being in the club, you learn the protocol and everything to follow. But most of the guys, I'm not personally, but most of the guys are trained storm spotters, so they know what they're looking for. They know the difference in a wall cloud and a funnel cloud, and whether or not it's a tornado. Excuse me. And they're the ones that are actually passing the real life information onto the National Weather Service. The National Weather Service is actually being monitored. They're actually getting information from these ham radio operators.
That's just awesome, though. And I was actually surprised just by looking. I mean, this is not the first time I look at the prices, but I was actually surprised how it's not really that expensive. I thought it was going to be extremely expensive, and it's not.
Well, and it can get extremely expensive. If you want to talk to the other side of the world, you're probably going to spend $500 on an HF rig, and then, another $60 to $100 on an antenna. But if what you're looking for is local area within a 50-mile radius, something like that, you can get one of the Baofeng radios for $35, $50, and you're up and running.
Yeah, I like that. Now, how good is it to so when you load your frequency and all that, how secure it is? So if anybody that has a scanner, anybody could pretty much listen to what you said?
Yes, it's not secure, and really you're not going to find any legal radios that are actually secure for civilian use.
Okay, got it.
Legal.
So there's no timing, helping, all that stuff that we use in the military.
No. None of that is legal for civilians. So you're not going to find anything that is actually truly secure. You may find things that, and even like your GMRS radios that you bought, they may have some security feature on it. But all that means is somebody that has the exact same radio,
could listen,
isn't going to be able to hear you. If they have a scanner, they can hear it.
Okay. So that's pretty interesting. So pretty much it's not going to be secure. It's just, I mean, I still think it wouldn't be a bad deal. That's why we have 10 codes. That's why we have different codes that means something,
Right.
I mean, as a police officer, you could say 10-5, 10-19, 10-21, and people be like, what are you saying? And it makes absolutely sense to the other guys. So that's not that. I don't think that's a big deal at all. So, so why do you think that people should get into this versus just the other radio? If somebody would ask you about communication, would you advise him to get a ham license and start this process?
Most definitely, and a couple of reasons. First off, the radios that you have, technically. Now, I've never heard of anybody actually getting in trouble for it, but technically there's only like 5 channels that you can use on those radios without having a license. technically, to use most of the channels on that radio, you have to have a GMRS license,
Mm-hmm.
which is, there's no test to take or anything. It's just a fee that you pay to the FCC, and they give you a license for it. But the ones that you can actually technically use legally, a quarter of a mile max is all you're going to get from them, because it's a very low wattage, very low output, and it's just not really a good communication form, even point to point. But the thing is, with ham radio, it opens up so much. You're not limited. Whereas on your GMRS radios, you have channels. You set both of them to this channel, and I don't know if that's going to show up or not. But on these radios, you're actually looking at frequencies. So your possibilities are almost endless. You can have, and that's where you can kind of be secure, is if you have a radio plan where, this time of day we're on this frequency, this time of day we're on this frequency, and you can actually do duplex where you're talking on one frequency and receiving on another, so that even if they do find you and are listening, they may only hear one side of the conversation.
That's actually, I didn't even thought about that. That's actually a very good idea. So, I guess you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, well, my first ticket, I actually let my first ticket expire, but I got my first ticket when I was 15 years old. So I've been doing this a few years.
So there is not an age restriction or anything?
No age restriction. If you can pass the test, you can be a ham radio operator.
That's cool. So what's the price? Do you remember how much it's gonna cost
to take the test?
Yeah, like taking the test, getting a radio. What is somebody that has nothing is gonna be spending to have some kind of two-way setup? Simple.
Usually, to take the test is going to be, I would say most places it's going to be $10. You're going to have to get in touch with your local ham radio club, because that's usually who administers the test. But generally, you're going to be looking at $10 for the test, maybe $20 depending on your area and the interest. And then once you do that, really, it's as easy as getting a $35 radio to start getting involved. So, initial output, you can save $45 and you're into ham radio.
That's good. That's a pretty good price.
It's great, because back when I was 15, my dad ended up buying a used rig for like $350, $400, and it was great. I learned a lot on it, but it was an HF rig, so it was a long distance rig. So everyone that I talked to was at least out of state, if not out of country.
That's what do you do when you talk to somebody out of country? Like,
well, now also realize that back when I had the HF rig, Morse code was still required. So when you're speaking in Morse code, you don't really have to worry about the language barrier.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I just think it's critical. If anybody watching or the people are watching, I think this is definitely a good choice. I've been doing a lot of research on this as well, and I think this is going to be the way that I'm going to go, because I want to have at least 5 miles. That's the minimum. I like to have at least 25 miles, but 5 miles and being involved and starting to learn. This is just like shooting a gun, man. You have to learn how to use these things. You have to learn how to everything. I mean, this is why it takes so many years to kind of become experienced in some fields, because it takes time, and I feel kind of like I'm behind the power in this one, because to tell you the truth, I knew a lot about radios. I mean, when it came to the Marine Corps, the radios that we used in the Marine Corps, I was pretty experienced on it, even though I'm not a radio operator, but just from doing patrols and things like that, I used the radios. But when it comes to the civilian sector of the house, I don't know anything about ham. You know what I'm saying? I'm like totally lost when it comes to that. So, I mean, I'm sure I'm gonna learn very quickly, but still, I don't know much about it. So I'm glad you're passing this information here.
Well, and the best advice that I can give to anybody thinking about getting into it is get on the web and find your local ham radio club. and go to a meeting. Go introduce yourself, tell people that you're interested, and really, it's going to be the nicest group of people you've ever met. They're going to want you to get involved. They're going to take you under their wing and start teaching you things, and you in no time at all you can be a ham radio operator.
And I just like that survival ability or capability where you guys are passing information. I mean, that's just unbelievable that you have all this information being passed in this network or this radio station or frequency, and you're missing out. You know what I'm saying? You're missing out.
Most people don't even realize it. Yeah, most people don't even realize it. But as a ham radio operator, you're getting information way before it's coming across the TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things that is making me think. Something happens, some type of emergency, I could just open my card or whatever, take the radio out, turn it on, and now I'm receiving accurate or receiving pretty good information that could be the difference. And just by looking at some of the things here in Amazon, I mean, you could customize these radios however you want. You got earpieces, you have all kind of different things.
Right.
So when it comes to tactical operation, other than the fact that people could listen to your conversation, but we talked about talking in codes, I mean, you could use these radios for any type of applications.
Oh yeah,
survival, anything.
There's earpieces. There's even throat mics that you can use. So you can get some nice setups where they could really be useful in a tactical situation.
Cool. All right, so you have anything else? What do you think? Anything that we're missing? Anything that you think we should pass? Anything else?
Well, it's one of those. It's a ball of yarn. You start unspooling it and you can go on forever. But really, the biggest thing that I can pass on to somebody is if you're interested, just start looking for your local club. Go to a meeting or two, get involved, and find an Elmer. That's one thing that with ham radios, there's a lot of lingo that is specific to ham radio. But an Elmer is generally an older guy, older lady who is experienced in ham radios and wants to help somebody learn. So go to your local club, find an Elmer, and start soaking up information. And really, anybody can do it. Like I said, I did it at 15 years old. So
cool. Just the only thing I'm gonna add up to that, guys, is just like anything else, like training. You gotta put this part as part of your training. Communication is extremely important. You have to be able to talk to each other. I mean, just knowing what's gonna happen, it's unbelievable. And this may sound kind of funny, but if you watch The Walking Dead, how many issues you think they would not have if they would have had some type of communication?
Exactly. Well, and that's an aspect we didn't point on. Natural disasters, anything like that happens, there's a good chance the cell phone grid is either going to go down or be so jammed up that you can't get through.
Yep. No,
you got a radio, right. You can always find a frequency and you can communicate.
Yeah, that's I laugh watching The Walking Dead because I always think about that. If they would have had a rally point, meaning that they go to a specific location, or they would just had a radio to say, "Hey, meet me here." I guess we would have had a bunch of episodes, like a whole series right now. So they had to make it that way. But yeah, having that radio and being able to talk to each other is extremely critical. Maybe you want to tell somebody, "Hey, meet me here." Maybe you want to tell your family a hurricane or a tornado's coming, stay there. Bad guys are shooting at me from the front, come over here. So having that radio is extremely important. So I would definitely encourage you to start doing some training. Not only in firearms, but also in medical and also in communication. That communication piece, people usually forget that part, and it's extremely important. So I appreciate you coming, Alabama Owens. If you haven't subscribed to him, go ahead and check him out. Do a plug for your channel.
JH6, I just appreciate you having me on. Alabama Owens on YouTube, guns, gear, prepping, my opinion if I feel like it one day. But kind of in the same vein as the type of videos that JH6 does.
Cool. So like I said, guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Like the video if you like this type of video. Subscribe to the channel. share the channel, and as always, God is in control.